Sign it now, or you'll be out by the weekend. That's what my son's wife, Victoria, said to me as she slid the stack of papers across my kitchen table. Not her kitchen table, mine. The same table where I poured coffee for my husband every morning for over 30 years. The same table where Richard once sat, wide-eyed and barefoot, scribbling and coloring books while I paid bills and made grocery lists. Now, he wouldn't even look at me. Victoria had that calm, clipped voice she used when she wanted something. Her nails tapped the counter, polished and pointed like she was expecting to sign a TV deal, not push an old woman out of her home. I glanced over at Richard. He was standing by the window, arms crossed, head down. He wasn't saying a word. That was the worst part. If he had at least gotten angry or even looked me in the eye, I could have handled it. But the silence, that tore through me worse than anything she could have said. This is just a formality, Victoria continued, smoothing the papers like she was folding laundry. We're only trying to protect your interests, Eunice. Retirement homes have waiting lists, and we've already found a good one. Private room, round-the-clock care, very comfortable. She said comfortable like she was talking to a child, like I didn't know exactly what this was. I stared at the top sheet, a quitclaim deed. My name, half printed already. All that was left was for me to sign it and hand over the house I'd built a life in. Just like that. No warning, no conversation, just ink on paper, and I'd be gone by Friday. My hands shook, not from fear, not even from anger, from heartbreak. This wasn't just a house. This was all I had left of my husband, Raymond. He passed 15 years ago, worked for the city sanitation department, never complained, even in the snow. We saved every dime, paid this house off early. We didn't have much, but we had roots. And now, my daughter-in-law, a woman I'd cooked Sunday meals for, helped move into her first apartment, smiled at through gritted teeth, was trying to erase me. I held the pen in my fingers. I could hear Victoria breathing, sharp, expectant. Richard still wouldn't move. The last time he looked that lost was when he broke his arm falling off a swing set in 3rd grade. I'd sat beside him the whole night at the ER. Now, he couldn't even sit beside me at a table. Victoria leaned in, her voice low. If you don't do this now, it won't be as simple later. The bank won't wait forever on the refinance. We're giving you the respectful option. But if you force our hand, I cut her off. You'll do what exactly? My voice surprised even me. It was steady, cold, even. Drag me out in front of the neighbors. She blinked. I saw a flicker of annoyance behind her eyes, like I'd stepped out of line. No one wants that, she said. But we need this done. You're not in a position to manage the property anymore. And Richard and I have plans. This neighborhood is changing. The value's up. You'll be taken care of. Taken care of. That's what people say about dogs when they put them down. I looked down at the pen. Black ink. New. Bought just for today. I bet. Victoria was sure of herself. She thought I was confused. Old. Easy to manipulate. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd been preparing. For weeks. I'd seen the signs. The phone mysteriously unplugged some mornings. Letters that used to come straight to me now rerouted. My bank calling about password resets I never made. Victoria had gotten bolder after I slipped on the back steps last winter. One little fall, and suddenly she was rearranging my medicine cabinet and talking about assisted living like it was already on the calendar. That's when I started paying attention, not just to what she was saying, but to how she was saying it. I wrote things down, quietly, dates, words, moods. I looked up laws at the library, talked to a woman at church whose sister had gone through something similar. I even took a bus to a legal aid office 2 towns over. I learned about elder coercion, about property rights, about what my signature meant, and what could be done if someone tried to push me into giving it away. So I looked at that stack of papers on my kitchen table. I picked up the pen, and I signed, not what they thought, but something else. Victoria grabbed the papers quickly, flipping to check the signature. She didn't even read what I'd written. She just smiled. "Thank you," she said, like she just closed a sale. Richard still hadn't spoken. I looked right at him. "This what you wanted?" I asked. He nodded barely. A man shrinking into himself. They left shortly after, Victoria humming, clutching the papers like a prize. Richard trailing behind. I stood at the window long after they'd pulled out of the driveway. Then I went into the den, opened my file drawer, and pulled out the envelope I'd sealed 3 days ago. It was already addressed, already stamped, and already on its way to someone who knew exactly what those signatures actually meant. This wasn't over. Not even close. I was 29 when Raymond and I closed on this house. Small brick 1-story, nothing fancy, but the porch got plenty of sun in the morning, and there was a big oak tree out front that we used to joke would outlive us both. The neighborhood wasn't much back then, just working folks, churchgoers, and kids riding bikes past 8 p.m. We paid $47,000. I remember because it took nearly everything we had. Raymond worked sanitation for the city. Hard job, but he never missed a shift. I worked behind the counter at the post office for 28 years. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills and came with health insurance, which mattered back then. We didn't travel. We didn't have big parties. But we built a home. I got pregnant with Richard a few years after we moved in. We turned the smallest room into a nursery, painted it yellow. Raymond said it was a safe bet since we didn't know the baby's gender yet. When we brought Richard home from the hospital, he had colic for 3 weeks straight. We took turns pacing the hallway at night, whispering lullabies. Then one day, Raymond just didn't come home. Heart attack. He was 47. I was left with a 7-year-old boy, a mortgage, and a grief that sat on my chest for 2 years before it let me breathe right again. I never remarried. I didn't have the heart for it. My life became about work, bills, and raising Richard right. And I did raise him right. At least I thought I had. He was never wild, always polite. Smart, too. Got through college. Met a girl while working a city job in Newport News. Her name was Victoria. She was pretty in that made-up kind of way, always polished, not a hair out of place. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, but I thought maybe that was just nerves. The first time she came over, she brought a pie from some upscale bakery. Told me she didn't have time to bake, but hoped I wouldn't mind. I didn't. I just figured she was busy. She worked in insurance, something with property, always on her phone. I never could get a full sentence out of her unless Richard was in the room. Still, I tried. I invited her for dinners, bought her a scarf for Christmas, put her name on cards. I wanted to believe that if I was kind, she'd warm up. That's what people do, right? But some people don't warm up. Some people just wait for a chance to move in and take over. The trouble started last winter. It was icy out. I slipped coming down the back steps. Nothing major, just landed on my side. No broken bones, just bruises. But Victoria made it sound like I'd cracked my skull wide open. She insisted I move into the guest suite. Said the upstairs was too dangerous for me. I said I was fine, but Richard chimed in, saying maybe it was for the best. I let it go. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was getting slower on the stairs. And truth be told, I didn't mind the guest suite. It had its own little bathroom and was closer to the laundry. I thought it was temporary, but once I was in there, I wasn't allowed back upstairs. She said it was just until we know you're stable. Then came the changes. The first thing she did was take over my prescriptions. She said it was to stay organized and avoid mix-ups. I didn't even think about it at first. But then she started keeping my pills in a locked cabinet. I had to ask her every day for my own medication. Next was the mail. She said she was sorting it for me. Said she didn't want me dealing with junk or scams. But after a while, I realized I hadn't seen a single bank statement in over a month. I asked about it. She smiled, told me everything was fine, and changed the subject. Then I checked my account on my own at the library since my tablet started acting up around the same time. I saw money being moved. Not large sums, just little bits. Amazon charges I didn't make. Grocery bills double what they used to be. A cleaning service I never hired. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said it was part of a consolidated household plan. I didn't know what that meant, and honestly, she said it so fast I couldn't keep up. That's when I started to worry. She got more confident, more comfortable walking into my space like it was hers, rearranging things, throwing out old furniture, saying things like, "This house is stuck in 1980. We need a modern touch." We. That's what she said. Not you. Not Eunice. We. She even started making suggestions about my will. Not directly, but in those quiet, sneaky ways. It's smart to have someone younger listed on accounts. You don't want to leave things messy, do you? Always with a sweet voice. Always like she was doing me a favor. Then one morning, she brought coffee and set it down with a manila folder. "Just some things to look over," she said. "You don't have to sign today, but it's good to be prepared." Inside were documents, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, a draft of the deed. That's when I knew. This wasn't about helping me. This was about control. I didn't say anything right then. I thanked her for the coffee. I smiled. I nodded. Then I waited for her to leave, and I started digging. And the deeper I went, the more I realized I'd waited too long. But not long enough to lose everything. It was a Thursday morning when I first noticed something off. My Social Security check always came on the 3rd. That month, it didn't. I waited a couple more days, thinking maybe it was just delayed. By the following Monday, I decided to check my bank account on the computer in the library down the road. I didn't want to ask Victoria to use hers. Lately, every time I touched anything financial, she got fussy. "Don't worry about that, Eunice. I'm managing it now," she'd say, brushing me off like a child asking too many questions. I logged in using my old password. Thankfully, I remembered it. When the screen loaded, my stomach dropped. The check had been deposited, but over half of it was gone. There were charges I didn't recognize. A boutique in Norfolk, online purchases, a service that billed itself monthly, something called Home Care Premium, but I hadn't signed up for anything like that. There was a $200 charge for a consultation fee, and another for a private shuttle company, all within 2 weeks. I went home and asked Richard about it. He barely looked up from his phone. "Victoria's helping with the bills now," he said, shrugging. "She's streamlining everything. You don't have to worry." "I am worried," I told him. "That's my money." "Mom, it's not like she's taking it. We're just organizing things." "Then why wasn't I told?" He sighed like he was tired of the conversation. "You're still in the account, right? So you've got access. It's not a big deal." That's when I knew he wasn't going to help me. Later that afternoon, I called my friend Yvette. We'd met in line at the DMV years ago and stayed friends. She's a sharp woman, runs a local quilting club, and doesn't bite her tongue for anyone. I told her everything over coffee at her house. When I got to the part about the charges and Victoria handling my mail, she leaned back and shook her head. "Eunice," she said, This sounds like what happened to my cousin Dolores. Her daughter-in-law got her to sign some estate paperwork. 6 months later, Dolores was in a nursing home, and her house was listed on Zillow. I stared at her. She tried to fight it, Yvette said, but by then, the deed was in someone else's name. It was a done deal. It chilled me. Dolores was sharp. She used to be a bookkeeper, and if it could happen to her, it sure as day could happen to me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and started writing things down. Dates, conversations, the names of those charges from my bank account. I found an old notebook and kept it tucked in my dresser. I didn't trust anyone with it, not even Richard. The next morning, I opened the kitchen trash can and saw something that made my chest tighten. Right there, half crumpled, under a banana peel, was a printed packet of papers. I pulled it out and smoothed the pages on the counter. There were brochures from 3 different retirement homes. Notes were scribbled in the margins. Private entrance available, request quote. Out-of-pocket cost better than Medicaid timeline. Good resale value on home once moved. Resale value? I folded the papers and slipped them into the drawer under the toaster. Then I went back to the guest suite, locked the door, and sat down hard. This wasn't about helping me. This wasn't about my safety. It was about the house, about money, about getting me out quietly with a smile, and then flipping the place for a profit. They didn't even have the nerve to talk to me like a person. They were planning this around me like I was already gone. 2 days later, Victoria came into my room with a small folder. She looked tired but pleasant, that fake pleasant that never sits right. "Hey, Eunice," she said, sitting on the arm of the chair. "I have some documents for your records. You don't need to do anything with them just yet. Just sign where it's marked, and I'll file them for safekeeping." I took the folder from her. Inside was a medical power of attorney form. I knew what it was because I'd helped my own mother fill one out when she got diagnosed with dementia. Victoria tapped her nails against the chair. "It just makes things easier if there's ever a medical emergency," she said. "That way we're not scrambling to make decisions." I looked at the line where she'd already written her name. Not Richard's. Hers. "I'll take a look at it later," I said quietly. She paused, then nodded. "Sure. Just try to get it back to me by the weekend." She left the room, and I stared at that folder like it was a snake. That's when it all came into focus. They wanted to take the house, label me incapable, tuck me away somewhere with soft lighting and bingo nights, then turn around and sell this place to the highest bidder. If this has ever happened to someone you know, or if you'd never want it to happen to you, go ahead and hit like. It's how we show each other we're not alone. Not out of love, not even out of fear, out of greed. That night, I took the bus to the library. I used the public computer again. I searched how to protect your home from being taken, elder law, signing away your rights, and coercion. I read stories, government resources. I learned about elder financial abuse. I read the signs, mail being controlled, financial changes, isolation from friends, rushed signatures. Every box was checked. Then I saw a small link for legal aid clinics. There was one in the next county, open every Wednesday. I called the number, left a message, and waited. The following week, I sat across from a woman named Tessa, who looked like she was barely 30, but knew the law like she'd lived through it herself. I laid everything out, quietly, slowly, letting the words catch in my throat when they needed to. She listened. Then she nodded. "You're not imagining it," she said. "You've got a case. But if they're already making moves, we need to get ahead of it. Do not sign anything else. And don't tell them you've spoken to me." I didn't. I went home. I smiled when Victoria asked how my library trip was. Then I added another page to my notebook. The game had changed, and so had I. It's a strange thing, getting older. One day people call you ma'am with respect, and the next they're talking over you like you're not even in the room. I've noticed how cashiers talk louder, how nurses explain simple things like I've never used a thermometer. Even my own son looks at me different now, like I've shrunk somehow, but I haven't. I may move slower, but my mind is sharp. I remember numbers, names, and who said what. I've kept this house standing through storms, leaks, and years of raising a child alone. So no, I'm not easy. And I'm not blind. They just thought I was. After that meeting with the legal aid woman, I started collecting proof. I made copies of my bank statements, the ones with the odd charges and missing deposits. I printed out the ones Victoria thought I hadn't seen. I found a folder on the home computer with old emails. I don't think she realized I knew how to access the backup files, but I did. Buried in there were messages between her and someone at a loan company talking about refinancing options. She wrote, "Just waiting on the deed from Eunice. Should be signed by next week." That email was dated 5 days before she brought me the quitclaim form. I printed that too. I didn't have fancy tools or tech knowledge, but I had a notebook, a drawer full of old envelopes, and a basic phone with a voice recorder. So I started recording things. When Victoria came in my room talking about protecting my future, I had my phone on. When Richard agreed with her and mentioned not stressing me with details, I hit record. I wasn't trying to trap them. I was trying to protect myself. I put everything in a brown envelope, tucked it inside an old cake tin no one ever touched in the pantry. Every few days, I added more. Then came my second meeting with the legal clinic. That's when I met Ms. Daniels, older than Tessa, but quieter, wore flat shoes, and didn't smile much, which I appreciated. She read through my papers carefully, flipping each one like she was sorting puzzle pieces. When she got to the refinancing email, she paused. "Have they mentioned refinancing the house to you?" "No," I said, "not once." She nodded slowly. "That's because they can't yet. Victoria doesn't have legal ownership. Not unless you sign that deed." My chest tightened. She's already talked to a lender. This is why she's pushing so hard. With your signature, she can refinance in her name, possibly take out equity. And if things go wrong, well, you'd be the one left with the mess. I sat back in the chair. Everything suddenly made sense. The pressure, the talk about safety, the staged concern. So if I don't sign it, I asked, they'll keep pushing. Or they'll try to make you seem mentally unfit. That's common. Can they do that? She looked at me. Not if you're documented, stable, and careful, which you are. That gave me a small measure of relief. Then she said something I didn't expect. There's a way to flip this. How? You give them what they're asking for, or so they think. We'll draft a document that looks like a quitclaim deed. Same number of pages, similar layout. But what you'll actually be signing is a revocable life estate. You stay the legal owner of the home until you pass, with full control. They won't be able to sell, refinance, or even make changes without your approval. And they won't notice? Not if we do it right. She leaned forward. Once they file this with the wrong intentions, we'll have them. On paper. It'll be clear they either didn't read what you signed or tried to misuse it. That gives us the legal upper hand. I sat there, stunned. You mean sign it, but not really? Sign our version, she said. At your time, on your terms. We'll even match the font and paper. The next hour was filled with forms and questions. Ms. Daniels made sure I understood every line. Nothing rushed, nothing hidden. When we were done, she looked me in the eye. You're going to have to act. Calm, cooperative, maybe even a little unsure. Can you do that? I nodded. If they pressure you again, don't resist. Just go along. Let them feel like they've won. I can do that. The night before I knew they'd bring the papers again, I practiced in the mirror. I watched my face. I softened my voice. I rehearsed saying, "Okay, if you think it's best, just write." And when I was ready, I took Ms. Daniels' version of the document and slipped it into the same blue folder Victoria had given me weeks earlier. Then I waited. Sure enough, 2 days later, Victoria came in with a forced smile and said, "I brought the notary today. We can get everything signed and filed before Friday." I acted confused at first. "Oh, right, you needed my signature," I said. "I was just looking at those papers again." She didn't suspect a thing. She handed me a pen and pointed to the line. Richard stood behind her, quiet as always. I signed it slowly with a steady hand. "Thank you," she said, grabbing the folder fast. "This helps everyone." I smiled. Then I watched her walk out the front door, already dialing her phone. And I thought, you really think I'm that easy? Not today. Not ever. She laid the folder down like she was setting the rules of a game. She already won. Victoria sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her arms were folded, her face tight and polite. I knew that face. It was the one she used when she wanted to push something through without making a fuss. A soft voice, a kind smile, but underneath there was pressure. Richard stood off to the side, near the fridge, like he didn't want to be seen or heard. He kept glancing out the window, like he wanted to be anywhere else. "This is the right move. Eunice," Victoria said. "We've taken care of everything. It'll be quick, and you won't have to worry about anything anymore." She slid the folder toward me, just like last time. "This is for your peace of mind," she added, "and for ours." I stayed quiet, running my hand over the folder, slowly. I already knew what was inside. Or rather, I knew what they thought was inside. Victoria leaned in. "Don't you trust your own son?" She said it like she was handing me a cup of tea. Calm, warm. But that line hit hard. It wasn't just a question. It was a dig, a test, a reminder of the little crack in my heart that Richard had let grow wider every day he stayed silent. I looked at him. He met my eyes for the briefest moment, then looked down at the floor. Victoria placed a pen on top of the folder. "It's just a formality," she said. I nodded slowly. My fingers felt cold, but I kept my voice steady. "Well, if it'll help you both, then okay." I opened the folder, flipped to the signature page, and took a breath. I picked up the pen and signed my name just like they expected. Victoria reached over before the ink was dry. She didn't flip through the pages. She didn't double-check a thing. Just closed the folder like it was done. "Wonderful," she said, already standing. "We'll take care of the paperwork from here. I'll get this filed this afternoon." She turned to Richard. "Let's go. We have a meeting with the lender in an hour." Richard hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the folder in her hand, then back to me. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Victoria nudged him with her elbow. He followed her out. I waited until I heard the front door shut and their car back out of the driveway. Then I pulled my phone from my sweater pocket and sent one text to Ms. Daniels. "It's done." I placed the phone down and exhaled. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for a week. I stood, walked to the sink, and filled a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I thought they would be, but something else had settled in, something I hadn't felt in months. Control. That afternoon, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't make any calls. I just sat in my chair by the front window and listened to the sound of the neighborhood. Birds, a lawnmower down the street, the usual, but it all felt a little sharper, like I was paying closer attention. That night, I didn't fall asleep right away. I lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. I listened for every sound, every creak in the floorboards, every car passing outside. My heart was steady but alert. I knew I had done something big, something risky, something that could change the direction of everything. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But I was wide awake, because I knew the real storm hadn't hit yet. And when it did, I had to be ready. It was early afternoon when the phone rang. I was folding towels in the laundry room. I let it ring twice before I picked it up. Mrs. Young? Yes. This is Calvin Dorsey from the firm of Sandwell and Beck. I represent Richard and Victoria Young. I was calling in regards to the deed you recently signed. He paused like he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. There seems to be a discrepancy, he went on. The document filed with the county clerk does not match the version we were expecting. I could hear the unease in his voice. Lawyers don't usually stumble like that unless something's gone sideways. We just wanted to confirm, was it your intention to maintain control of the property? Yes, I said. Silence. I see, he finally said. I think it would be best if we... You can speak with my attorney, Ms. Daniels. I cut in. She has all the paperwork. Another pause. Very well, he said, quieter this time. We'll be in touch. He hung up before I could. I didn't waste a second. I texted Ms. Daniels. Just got a call from their lawyer. He's rattled. She replied minutes later. They filed the wrong deed. It's already flagged by the county office. I'll handle the rest. That night, she sent over a copy of the formal complaint she filed, attempted coercion, misuse of legal documents, and a request for protective measures on my property. Everything we talked about was in writing now, real, legal. The next day, a certified letter went out to Richard and Victoria, official notice of pending legal review. I knew they'd see it before the weekend. They didn't call, but the morning after, Richard showed up on my porch alone. He didn't knock right away, just stood there, looking unsure. When he finally did knock, it was soft. I opened the door and didn't invite him in. Mom, he said, his voice low, can we talk? I stepped aside without a word. He sat at the table, the same table where he stood silently just days before. What did you do? He asked, his eyes wide. The lawyer said the paperwork was wrong. He said it wasn't what we thought. I sat across from him, hands folded in my lap. It wasn't wrong, I said. It just wasn't what she thought. He stared at me. I had every right to protect myself. You knew what was happening, Richard. You just didn't want to stop it. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he always did when he was nervous as a boy. I didn't know she was doing all that, he said. I thought we were just helping you transition. You've been struggling, Mom. I'm 70, I said, not 90. I slipped once. You let her turn that into a reason to steal my house. His head dropped. I didn't know about the bank stuff, he mumbled, or the insurance calls. She handled that. I leaned forward. You handed her the keys to everything. My bills, my records, my home. You trusted her more than you trusted me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said it. She's in a lot of debt. I let the words hang in the air. She told me we needed the equity from the house to pay off the credit cards. She said it would help us both. There it was. The truth finally out. She promised we'd move you to a nicer place. Said it would feel like a retirement upgrade, not a downgrade. I didn't know what to say. You could have said no. I was scared, he admitted. Scared of her. Scared of everything falling apart. Well, I said, it's falling apart now, and not because of me. He wiped at his face. I couldn't tell if he was wiping sweat or tears. Maybe both. She told me you were losing it. He said quietly that you were mixing things up, forgetting details. She made it sound like you weren't all there anymore. And you believed her? I didn't want to, he whispered. I stood up. You've got a choice to make, Richard. One that doesn't have anything to do with paperwork. He looked up at me. You can walk away from her or walk away from me. If you've ever had to choose between what's right and keeping the peace in your family, tap that like button now. And share this. Someone out there needs to feel seen today. His face broke then. Not all at once, but slowly. The way a person looks when they finally realize they've been used. I don't know what to do, he said. You start by deciding who you are and who you want to be around when this is over. He sat there for another minute, then stood. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, he said. I hope so, I told him. But that doesn't change what's already been done. He walked out the door without saying anything else. I watched him go, not with anger, but with deep disappointment. That night, I called Yvette and told her everything. She didn't say, I told you so. She just said, it's about time you got your power back. And she was right. The envelope came on a Monday, cream-colored, stiff, the kind that feels serious in your hands before you even open it. Inside was a letter from the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services. The elder abuse complaint had been reviewed. They were moving forward with a formal investigation. I sat at the kitchen table, reading every line twice. They'd be contacting Victoria, Richard, and their attorney within the week. A separate notice was also being sent to the county registrar's office to freeze any activity on the property until the matter was settled. That meant no refinancing, no sale, no funny business. I exhaled. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was ahead of it. The following day, Ms. Daniels confirmed the house title had been officially updated to reflect my life estate ownership. Legally speaking, no one could touch it, not without my say-so. Not even Richard. Not even if Victoria tried again under some new excuse. We also filed a protective clause with the county. If anyone attempted to modify the deed again, it would automatically flag the local elder protection office. That same afternoon, Victoria got a letter of her own. A legal restriction, naming her as a person temporarily barred from handling any financial or legal matters on my behalf. I didn't see her face when she opened it, but I imagined her surprise. She didn't knock. She didn't come over. Instead, she texted me. One line. You'll regret this. I stared at the message for a good minute. Then I deleted it without replying. I'm sure she wanted a reaction. I've learned that silence has its own kind of power. Later that week, Richard came by again. This time, he knocked softly and waited. I let him in. He looked tired, eyes puffy, hair uncombed. He sat down and placed a single key on the table. I moved out, he said. I didn't ask where he was staying. She doesn't want to talk. She says I ruined everything. I waited for him to go on. I don't even know how much she owes. It's more than I thought. Credit cards, a personal loan, some business deal gone wrong. Did she ever plan to tell me? He shook his head. I don't think she ever planned for you to stay in this house. He said. I nodded. And now? He looked up at me. I don't know. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just kept quiet, things would settle. That's not how these things work. He swallowed hard. I miss Dad, he said suddenly. I didn't expect that. I hadn't heard him say Raymond's name in years. He would have seen through this, Richard said. I let it get too far. I didn't rush to comfort him. It wasn't time for that. But I did place my hand on the table near his. I'm not mad anymore, I said, but I need time. He nodded. I understand. That night, I opened my old lockbox, the one Raymond and I used to keep birth certificates and papers in. I pulled out my will. I'd kept it simple for years, everything to Richard. But that was before I learned that people change. Or maybe just show you who they really are. I called my lawyer the next morning, had her draft a new one. I placed the house in a living trust. If anything ever happened to me, it wouldn't go through probate. It wouldn't be open for debate. I named Yvette the executor. She laughed when I told her. "Me," she said, "you sure you want a cranky old quilter handling your estate?" "I trust you," I said. "That's more than I can say for most people these days." We signed it later that week. I slept better after that. One morning, I got up early and drove to the hardware store. I bought a new deadbolt and a fresh set of keys. Took my time installing it, making sure every screw was tight. When I turned that new key in the door, it clicked clean and smooth. It felt like more than a lock. It felt like a line in the sand, a fresh start with no room for liars. I made 3 extra keys, one for me, one for Yvette, and one I tucked in a box marked emergency. Not once did I wonder if Victoria would come back, because even if she did, she'd be knocking on the wrong door. The old one she thought she could walk through is gone, and so is her access. I was sitting on my porch the other morning, rocking slowly in the chair Raymond built, when I noticed how quiet everything felt. Not silent, just peaceful. The kind of quiet you don't notice until you've been through a storm and finally come out the other side. Birds were chirping near the hedge. The breeze was gentle. The mail truck rolled by, and the driver gave me a wave. Yvette pulled into the driveway with 2 large iced teas and her usual sun hat. She plopped down in the chair next to me like she'd been doing it all her life. "I brought the good kind," she said. "Not that sugar-free stuff." I laughed. "You must really like me." She handed me the cup and leaned back. "You know what?" she said after a few minutes. "It feels like this place is breathing again." She was right. It did. The tension that used to hang in the walls, the quiet fear I had walking from room to room, it was gone. I didn't just feel like the owner again. I felt like myself again. And it wasn't because of paperwork. It was because I finally used my voice. There was a time I thought staying quiet kept the peace, that if I didn't make a fuss, things would settle. But now I know silence only helps the ones trying to take something that isn't theirs. These days, I volunteer 2 mornings a week at the Senior Resource Center downtown. Nothing big, just helping folks sort out Medicare paperwork, look up rental assistance, or answer questions about online scams. Sometimes I share what happened to me, not all at once, just enough so people understand that bad things can happen even when you think you've raised your kids right, even when you think you're safe in your own home. Last month, Ms. Daniels invited me to speak at a small event they hosted at the community library. The topic was elder dignity and legal protection. I almost said no, but then I thought about the women I've met at the center, the ones who whisper about their adult children taking their cards or their names being removed from leases. So I stood up that day in front of a room with maybe 20 people and told my story. I didn't use fancy language. I said, they asked me to sign a piece of paper, but what I really signed was a decision to fight, not just for my house, but for my right to be seen, to be heard, and to stay standing. People nodded. Some even cried. Afterward, a woman named Nora hugged me and said her niece had been pressuring her to sell her mobile home. She didn't know she had options. She said, "I thought I was being paranoid, but now I think I've just been too polite." That hit me deep, because I knew exactly what she meant. A few weeks after Richard moved out, he called, said he was seeing a counselor, said he was trying to figure out where things went wrong, not just with Victoria, but with himself. I told him I appreciated the call. We've had lunch a couple times since. Nothing dramatic, no big apologies. just slow steps forward. I don't know what the future holds between us, but at least now the terms are mine. Victoria never came back. Not in person, not by letter, not by phone. The county case was still open, but with her barred from legal access, there wasn't much left for her to do. I was finally able to rest. One morning, I found myself cleaning out the attic. I came across boxes I hadn't touched in years. Old photo albums, Raymond's work gloves, Richard's baby shoes. I sat up there for a long time with the fan on low and a cup of coffee, just looking through the pieces of my life. And I thought they really tried to erase this. Not just the house, but the history inside it. The work, the time, the love. And for what? A payout, a quick sale. People like Victoria see houses as property. But homes carry stories. And mine was never for sale. I may have signed a document that day, but it wasn't what they expected. I signed the line knowing I had the law behind me, but more than that, I had me behind me. No more second guessing. No more waiting for permission to stand my ground. I took it back. So now I'll ask you, because if you're still listening, I know you're someone who's seen things too. Have you ever felt like someone tried to take something from you? Not just your house or your savings, but your place in the world? Have you ever stood your ground with nothing but your name, your truth, and your will? If you have, tell me below. I want to hear your story. I want others to hear it too. And if you haven't yet, maybe today's the day you take the pen back. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Don't just scroll away. Leave a comment. Let folks know we don't have to be silent just because we're older. And if you believe our stories still matter, click that subscribe button, because I've got more to share.